Because of our age difference, I can't really say much about him around the house. But he was always very kind, very protective. That's the picture I still have.
Maria Elena has spent most of her time out of the public eye, while her brother Jorge Mario Bergoglio became Pope Francis, one of the most famous and powerful religious leaders of our time. She stayed in Argentina and kept to herself. In a world where being seen and being present is everything, her choice to skip such a public event was a surprise. Not only for the Catholic Church, but also for politicians, religious leaders, and regular people from all over the world, the death of a pope is always a big deal. People wrote a lot of nice things about Pope Francis after he died from complications from a stroke and a long fight with pneumonia. Well-known people such as U.S. President Joe Biden and King Charles sent messages of sympathy. The Vatican said that Pope Francis would lie in state at St. Peter's Basilica for 3 days. After that, there would be an official funeral that millions of people would attend. In the middle of this world goodbye, Maria Elena's name was noticeably missing from the list of people who were going to be there. This move got people's attention right away. Was she trying to avoid the attention? Was her sadness too much for her to handle? Was there a bigger fight in the family or a debate with the Vatican? The ideas were all over the place, from passionate to suspicious. Some said it was a peaceful protest. Others thought there was unresolved stress going on behind the scenes. But what seems to have happened was much more emotional and maybe even more powerful. At first, Maria Elena didn't say anything in public. The quiet only made people think more about it. People and the media started to fill in the blanks because there wasn't a clear answer. Some people said Maria Elena might not have agreed with the choices that were made during her brother's last weeks. Some people wondered if she was talking about the church or something else. The truth wasn't black and white, though, as it is with many deeply human stories. When she did finally give a short comment to Argentine media, it was calm, honest, and from the heart. "Jorge was my brother before he was Pope," she said. "I didn't have to say goodbye in Rome. He's with me here, in the streets we walked, the house we shared, and the faith we learned together." This quiet answer cut through the noise and showed something simpler and maybe more important than people had thought. It's simple to forget that behind every world leader and famous person are relationships and private lives. Maria Elena saw Pope Francis as more than just the leader of the Catholic Church. She looked up to him as an older brother and had grown up to protect her. He had a big impact on her life from the start. They were together a long time before Jorge Mario Bergoglio became a priest, or even the Pope. The world may have been focused on the formal goodbye, but Maria Elena picked a different path that showed how close they were. It wasn't rudeness or distance that made her choose to mourn alone in Ituizango, the quiet town in Argentina where she lives with her family. It was about being close and keeping a personal relationship that wasn't set by ceremonies in public. She might have felt distant, official, and not very personal at the Vatican funeral. It wasn't where they had lived together, and she didn't feel like she needed to say goodbye there. A lot of people around the world may understand what it means to say that sadness is very personal. Large groups or public events don't always make people feel better. Some people like to be alone, be in a place they know well, or spend time with close family. So, Maria Elena's choice wasn't all that strange. The fact that her brother had been one of the most famous people in the world made it stand out. Still, some people have kept guessing. In a way, it makes sense. These days, famous people are expected to make public moves, and when they don't, they tend to get a lot of attention. There have been rumors that people might not agree on where Pope Francis should be buried. Reports say he asked to be buried in Santa Maria Maggiore instead of St. Peter's Basilica, which is not something that a pope usually asks for. There have been rumors that Maria Elena may have agreed with that choice and thought that the official plans went against what he wanted. But she hasn't said anything about any of these claims, and the Vatican hasn't said anything either. Some people have seen her disappearance as a comment on the Church as a whole. As a revolutionary, Pope Francis worked to make things more open, simple, and welcoming for everyone. People had both good and bad things to say about his views on LGBTQ+ problems, climate change, and economic justice. Some people thought Maria Elena's choice might have been a quiet way to support his goal, or even a sign of anger at how he was treated by the church's leaders. Once more, Maria Elena hasn't directly talked about these ideas. That's what she's always said. Her choice was about love, not politics. Maria Elena has never tried to be the center of attention. While her brother was Pope, she didn't do many interviews and stayed out of the public eye. When people used to ask her about her relationship with Pope Francis, she always talked about family, memories from her youth, and the simple values their parents taught them. When she looked at Jorge, she never thought about his power or status. He was the same brother who had helped her with schoolwork, made her laugh, and wrote her notes full of faith and hope. It makes more sense for her not to be at the funeral in that light. It wasn't an act of defiance. It was an act of respect for their relationship, the simplicity they shared, and the ideals they both held dear. She may have done exactly what her brother would have wanted by grieving alone. She may have honored him in a way that was honest and true to her heart. Some of the things she said are similar to things Pope Francis often talked about, like being real, being humble, and having personal faith. He turned down luxury and ceremony in favor of doing important work and leading quietly. That being said, Maria Elena's choice doesn't seem strange at all. In fact, it seems to fit with everything her brother stood for. Before everyone knew his name as Pope Francis, before people cheered in St. Peter's Square, or the news called him a reformer, there was just Jorge Mario Bergoglio, a boy from Buenos Aires, Argentina, who grew up in a simple home with faith, family, and quiet strength. Jorge was born in Flores in 1936. It is a working-class neighborhood. His family had 5 kids, and he was the oldest. Upbringing was based on love and hard work. His father, Mario Bergoglio, was from Italy and worked as an accountant for a railroad. He raised the kids and made sure the family stuck to Catholic beliefs with his mother, Regina Maria Sivari. In 1929, the Bergoglio family left Italy to get away from Mussolini's growing fascist government. They went to South America to find safety, security, and a fresh start. It wasn't easy to live in Buenos Aires. Because money was tight at the time, both parents had to give up things. Mario worked long hours to support the family, and Regina taught her children to have a strong faith and a sense of what is right and wrong. Their house wasn't very fancy, but it was full of love and order. The Bergoglio kids, Alberto, Oscar, Marta, Jorge, and finally Maria Elena, had a strong sense of duty, compassion, and a spiritual link as they grew up. There are 3 children. The youngest, Maria Elena, was born in 1948, 12 years before Jorge. Because she was the smallest, she thought of her brother as both a brother and a second father. He helped her grow up, kept her safe, and showed her the way as a child. She has often used warm and personal language to talk about their friendship. "We weren't rich, but we had love," she said in one of the few interviews she did over the years. "My mom taught us how to give, and my dad taught us how to be honest and stand tall." Both Jorge and Maria Elena learned a lot during their early years in Flores. It wasn't a privileged place for them to live, but it was full of deep beliefs. They learned how to share, be nice, and deal with hard times without getting angry. Jorge stood out even when he was a kid. Maria Elena said that he always looked out for other people. She said that he set up games for kids in the area, settled disagreements in a cool and fair way, and shared his lunch with someone who didn't have one. You couldn't learn these traits from books. They came from their family's steady love and the hard times they went through. The family was very sad when their father, Mario, died when he was still young. Jorge, who was already a teen, took on more responsibility. Maria Elena has very clear memories of those times. "He didn't flinch," she said one time. "Anything to help Mama feed us, he did. He swept floors and tested chemicals in a lab. When he got home, he was tired, but he still found time to help Maria Elena with her homework and read her bedtime stories. Even though they were small, these experiences helped him become the kind of leader who served quietly and gave without expecting anything in return. In the world as a whole, these were years of change and stress. Argentina was having trouble with its government, its economy, and its culture. But in the Bergoglio home, Faith, family, and staying alive were still the most important things. Regina, their mother, relied on her Catholic faith to keep the family together. She prayed with her kids and took them to Mass. She made sure they knew that character was more important than looks. She had a huge effect on people, especially Jorge. Many people in the family were shocked when Jorge, who was 21 years old at the time, said he was going to college to become a priest. At the time, Maria Elena was still a child, so the choice seemed sudden and hard to understand. She said, "He was my big brother. He looked out for me and made everything okay. I didn't understand why he had to leave us," their mother said. "I was proud of him, but the decision hurt me too." Her faith as a Catholic made her understand and accept Jorge's calling, but as a mother, she was afraid of what it might mean. The news had effects on more than just religion. It also had effects on culture. In traditional Italian and Argentine families, it was very important for the family name to live on, especially through boys. When Jorge became a Jesuit and swore to be celibate, he meant that he would never get married or have kids. As the only son left alive after his brother Alberto died too soon, this fact was hard to deal with. In a personal sense, it meant the end of the Bergoglio family, and Jorge was getting ready to give his life to something bigger than himself. Maria Elena later said that Jorge's first few years in school were a mix of being far away and close. Even though he wasn't there as much, he tried to stay close by writing letters and visiting every once in a while. Those letters, which were full of spiritual thoughts and words of support, helped bring them closer together. In one, he wrote, "Maria, pray more. Always love." The simple words, "God is with you," brought her a lot of comfort. Since Jorge's path led him deeper into the Jesuit order and finally to more important roles in the church, Maria Elena stayed in Argentina and built her own life away from the spotlight. She got married to Adulio Vasquez and had 2 kids. She named one of them Jorge after her brother. She decided to live a quiet life, away from the places and events that would become important to her brother. Even as Jorge moved up in the Catholic Church, he never forgot where he came from. Maria Elena has talked a lot about how grounded he stayed. Even after being made Archbishop of Buenos Aires and then Cardinal, he continued to live a simple life, turning down many of the perks and comforts that came with his titles. The world went crazy when he became Pope in 2013. He was the first Pope from Latin America and the first Jesuit to do the job. For Maria Elena, though, the moment was both good and bad. She was so happy for everyone else that she was proud of her brother. But she also felt something different. He didn't just belong to the family anymore, he belonged to the whole world. She said, "I was so proud, but I felt like the world had lost my brother. He was no longer just mine, not just because of his new duties, but also because of what they meant for their relationship. She felt like she had lost something." The media's interest grew, and people started to go looking for her to get stories, ideas, and sometimes even rumors. Maria Elena did what she always does and kept quiet. To keep him safe, she decided to keep their family life secret. She thought that staying out of the press and letting him do his job without any distractions was the best way to help him. He didn't have a very exciting time in the church. The life of a Jesuit is known for being strict, humble, and helpful. Jorge liked that. He worked in schools, taught religion, and helped people find their way in life. He never liked being the center of attention or being seen as important. His co-workers often said that he heard more than he spoke. Even though he had more responsibilities, he stayed close to his roots. He kept writing letters to his family to check on Maria Elena and give her support as she dealt with the normal problems of life. His rise in the Catholic Church happened slowly over the years. He was made an assistant bishop of Buenos Aires in 1992. After 6 years, he was made archbishop. Soon after, in 2001, Pope John Paul II made him a cardinal. These changes happened slowly, but each one made his life more official and responsible. With each step, Maria Elena stayed in the background, proud, helpful, and quietly guarding the life they had shared. The whole world was shocked when he was chosen Pope in March 2013. He took the name Francis for the first time and was the first pope from Latin America. He was also the first Jesuit pope. People were excited and interested when he was elected. People were interested in what kind of boss he would be. Right from the start, he sent a different message. Instead of the fancy robes, he chose simple white clothes. Before he gave his first gift, he asked everyone to pray for him. He turned down the papal apartment and instead chose to live in a simple guest house inside the Vatican. Even though these were small actions, they said a lot. Pope Francis quickly became known for being humble, caring about the poor, and working to change the church's tone to be more kind and welcoming. He went to slums, washed prisoners' feet, and talked openly about problems with poverty and caring for the environment. He was a breath of fresh air for many people in a school that often felt far away. Maria Elena, on the other hand, wasn't surprised by this change. So she thought of him as just Jorge, the same Jorge who fed a hungry child, worked extra hours to help their mom, and put kindness ahead of showmanship. It was both moving and hard to watch him take on the weight of the Pope. Of course she was proud, but she also felt like the world took something away from her that was once hers. She has said in interviews that it was both sad and happy to see her brother become Pope. Along with her pride, she felt like she had lost something. She said, "I was so proud, but I felt like the world had lost my brother. He wasn't just mine anymore," she thought. The sudden attention that was directed at her made her feel even worse. People from the news came to her door. People she didn't know asked her questions. People were interested in what he was like as a child, what secrets she might be willing to share, and what kinds of stories she had to tell. Maria Elena never put herself out there. Instead, she kept their relationship secret to keep him safe. She knew how stressed he was and didn't want to make things worse. In a rare moment of honesty, she said, "It was awful at times. People wanted rumors and stories. So I could protect him and let him lead without getting in the way. I kept quiet." While Pope Francis was in Rome doing his job, Maria Elena stayed in Argentina and lived her life the way she always had. Keeping up with the normal rhythms of life, she stayed in the same neighborhood with her husband and kids. She didn't try to get interviews or attention. When she did talk, it was usually to support her brother's mission and remind him of the ideals they both held dear. Even when he was Pope, they kept writing to each other. He would still sign his letters Jorge instead of Francis. He would ask about her kids, her health, and what she was thinking. These letters were private and had nothing to do with titles or social standing. They helped him remember who he was and where he came from, no matter how important he was in the church. Maria Elena has said that these conversations are like lifelines. They helped her meet with the man whose name was on the title. She said, "He never forgot about us." At times when things were hard, she would pray for him, even with the world watching. She was a quiet source of strength for him when problems arose or when people questioned his choices. She never said she spoke for him, but she knew what kind of person he was. That was enough. Some in the church thought Pope Francis's method was too radical, as he became known for being progressive and putting people's needs first. More traditional voices in the Vatican spoke out against him. But Maria Elena never stopped being there for her. She often said that the ideals he stood for were the ones they had learned as children: faith, honesty, kindness, and simplicity. She stood by him even when people didn't like him, not as a spokesman, but as a sister. Maria Elena heard what he was saying when he spoke out against climate change, asked people to be more kind to refugees, or pushed the church to be more open to everyone. He had learned the same things in Buenos Aires when he was young. Between the Pope the world saw and the brother she knew, she saw no difference. Throughout his time as Pope, Francis was known for not making things too big. Instead of the traditional papal limousine, he decided to drive a simple car. He brought his own briefcase with him a lot. He tried to stay away from the trappings of fame as much as possible. Maria Elena didn't see these decisions as calculated moves. She saw them as signs of who he really was. "That's just Jorge," she said one time. "He didn't want attention. It was his only goal to do what was right. Maria Elena found it hardest about her brother being pope, not because of all the attention, but because she realized they had less and less time to spend together. Because of his job, he had to stay away from Argentina and rarely had time for personal trips. Still, she knew what was expected of her. She never didn't like that he was devoted to the church. She even thought it was great. She saw it as an expansion of the things he was always ready to give up. But even with all the important people, news crews, and memorial ceremonies, one person was missing. The Pope's only living sister, Maria Elena Bergoglio, wasn't there. She decided to stay in Argentina, her home country, and mourn in peace in Ituizango, away from the grand halls of the Vatican and the cameras of the world. Her disappearance became one of the most talked about parts of the funeral very quickly. Why did she not go to Rome? Was it a way to protest? Was she too sad to go on a trip? Was there a deeper, maybe more secret reason for her choice? The rumors started almost right away. There were lots of ideas on social media. News outlets picked up the story and asked if this was a sign of a family problem that hadn't been fixed or a disagreement with the church. At the right time, Maria Elena replied, but not with a news conference or an interview. Instead, she made a short public statement. Her words were simple, very specific, and didn't have any twists or turns. Jorge was my brother before he was Pope, she said. I didn't have to say goodbye in Rome. He is with me now, in the places we walked, the homes we shared, and the beliefs we learned together. Her answer gave me a new point of view. What everyone else saw as absence, she saw as presence. A way of remembering that wasn't based on a ritual, but on her own life. She told them it wasn't a refusal. She made this choice to honor her brother in a way that was more true to who they were and how they had lived. For Maria Elena, the thought of going to Rome to attend a state funeral and take part in very formal traditions probably seemed very different from how they were raised and how they both understood faith. Jorge had never been the type of person who needed fame or attention. During his time as Pope, he emphasized simplicity and care. Instead of living in the apostolic palace, he lived in a simple guest house. Instead of the protected car, he chose a less fancy Pope-mobile. He always told people to look past how things look and focus on what they mean. That was also the idea behind Maria Elena's choice. She wasn't rejecting her brother's heritage or the church when she didn't go to the funeral. She was enjoying the calm, steady link they had always had. Because they were in Ituizango, which was full of familiar places and memories they had made together, she felt closer to him than she would have in a big church, no matter how old or holy it was. The rumors didn't stop, though. Some people thought that her absence was because she and her brother had different ideas about how he should be buried. Before he died, rumors went around that Pope Francis wanted a simple burial at the Basilica of Santa Maria Maggiore instead of where all popes are buried, which is under St. Peter's. Others talked about how Maria Elena and Vatican officials might not get along, possibly because of how his health was treated or how some church reforms had worked out in his last years. Maria Elena talked about these ideas in a strong but quiet way. She said, "There's no fight and no secret. Jorge and I talked about everything. He made his wishes clear, and I honor them. My heart told me to stay home, since that's what he would have wanted." It's easy to forget that loss is personal, but what she said made it clear. This doesn't have to follow a plan or be what everyone else thinks it should be. The fact that she said goodbye in secret didn't make it any less meaningful. It might have been more true to the man she knew before he became Pope. Some people thought her absence was strange or even controversial. Others, though, thought it was quietly powerful, showing a deeper kind of loyalty that doesn't have to be shown to be real. The show going on in Rome was very different from what she chose. It seemed to support many of the same values that Pope Francis had pushed for, like putting kindness over formality, being humble, and being real. People who commented and friends of the family also gave more personal reasons. Maria Elena had lived longer than all of her brothers, after all. She was the last Bergoglio. After Jorge died, she was the only one who could remember their youth together, family stories, and memories that only they had. That loss might have been too much for her to handle in public. She said that his death had really upset her. "Jorge was my rock," she said, "my link to when we were kids. I feel like I've lost a part of myself when I lose him." But she claimed that it wasn't sadness that kept her away. She told him, "I'm not hiding. Yes, I'm sad, but I'm also happy about who he was. Every day, I pray for him here, where we grew up. That's enough." In her thoughts, she thought back to times in Catholic history when private acts of faith were more important than public shows. On a spiritual level, small acts of devotion, quiet prayer, and simple gifts often have more weight than big ceremonies. Maria Elena's choice wasn't just her own. It was also very much in line with the custom her brother had stood for. Some people who were more guessing thought that her absence might be a way for her to protest, not against her brother, but against the system. Some parts of the church were very critical of Pope Francis, especially for his ideas about how to include LGBTQ+ people, taking care of the environment, and the role of women. He had pushed for change, even when it cost him a lot. Some people wondered if Maria Elena's silence was meant to draw attention to those problems, but she firmly shot that idea down. She said, "Jorge cared about God and people. Like our parents taught us, he fought for peace and the poor. I'm happy for him. Always." Maria Elena's quiet presence in Argentina was a lesson that love doesn't always look the way we think it should. We live in a world where being seen is often seen as important. People's ideas about grief, loyalty, and honor are challenged by her story. It asks if presence has to be physical to be real, if love has to be seen to be real, and if faith has to be done in order to be important.